welcome to Beat Burnout interview series. I'm your host, Tanya Hussein, and I have brought together top coaches, authors, experts to help you if you are struggling, if you are a social worker, a healthcare professional, or even if you are a parent and you are struggling, or you're a carer or a business owner, wherever you are, you're struggling with overwhelm, you feel like you do not have any more to give. You have spent majority of your life giving and you feel completely dry. So I was really burnt out last year, this time last year from autumn, actually, 2017. And I had to go to a really dark place to find that light and that clarity. Although that might sound really cliche because you're seeing me now being full of joy and fulfilled, sometimes you need to go to that dark place. And that's why I'm really privileged and honored to bring some top coaches that are willing to share not just their expertise, but also their own personal stories of how, when they were in that dark place, how they came out and are leading their very fulfilled, balanced lives of today. So today I have with me Sharron Jamison. I'm going to mispronounce it. I'm sure she's going to correct me later. She is an entrepreneur, author, speaker. She's also a Christian minister. She's been teaching principles of love and self-empowerment for more than 25 years. And she actually started off owning her own fitness studio and then went into a corporate career managing multi-million pounds for an international biotech firm. And she recently founded the Jamison Group, a leadership and training company specializing in personal transformation and relational healing. She's really passionate and very creative with one-to-one coaching programs that she runs and group coaching programs that she runs. She's also an author. She's written several books. One of them is I Can Depend on Me, and one of her latest books is I Have Learned a Few Things. And she's also written a best-selling anthology, which I really like, The Strength of Myself. She is a woman of my own heart. Just a couple of weeks ago, we connected, and although I'd only connected with her that very first time, I felt like she was, my soul sister. I felt like I've known her all my life. Sharron, welcome. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm so excited to be here, and greetings from the United States. And thanks so much for the opportunity to be with you today.
Okay, I'm going to start with the question that I usually have been asking all the teachers is, tell us about your journey and how did you get to be doing what you are doing now?
Sure. My journey, I have to say, started when I was a little girl. My father's a minister, so I grew up seeing leadership. I grew up seeing people shepherd each other. I grew up understanding that we came to the world to contribute to the community. So I saw it with my father, my mother, how they really were the community shepherds and community advisors to a group of people. And so it was natural. My father and my parents always nurtured that leadership role. And I always felt like a leader. I always felt that I had a sense of being able to read people's hearts. I don't know if that was my nurture or nature, who knows, but that's how I was. And so I went into the adulthood thinking I would go into the ministry initially, and I did. I married someone of a different faith. I married a Muslim after being raised in a Christian family. I became very estranged from my family and the church, and so I lost everything. And I married a Muslim and understood a little bit more and differently about God and how we interact with God, and learned a lot about faith and Ramadan and all the other different types of activities and holidays in a different culture. And then when I got divorced, I had an opportunity to leave everything, to leave church, to leave all of my religious teachings, because I had to formulate a religion and a belief system that was mine. It wasn't Muslim. It wasn't Christian. It wasn't what I was taught. It wasn't what my husband wanted me to do or my parents wanted me to do. And I got to doing this work because I realized that even though religion is wonderful, I love it, I need it, religion has a way of stigmatizing people and villainizing people and dehumanizing people. And even though we go to a church or the mosque or the synagogue for our spiritual needs, our emotional needs go unaddressed.
Mm.
And even though here I am feeling that God loves me, but found myself in a very bad depression. Because again, we are taught rituals and spirituality, but not taught about how to handle your emotions, how to deal with despair and grief and loss, how to deal when you have had enough, how do you say no without feeling like you are selfish. And so I hit rock bottom, hit burnout, and I had to reinvent and recalibrate my life. And so now I'm here 50 something years later, and now I can bring all of my experiences and all of my understanding of faith from two different faiths, able to help people in a very revolutionary type of way.
It sounds although very painful and very difficult. From that struggle, you've actually approached your relationship with God is much more richer and more deeper, it sounds. And I wanted to ask you about the fact that when you are a Christian minister, when you are a social worker, as well as being a social worker and a trauma recovery coach, I also lead Quran study workshops and being the counselor, people that come into you for the help. And when you are the help, it's really hard to then say, well, I'm struggling. I'm having difficulty processing my emotions. I don't even know what emotions I'm feeling. So you've got to kind of wear this mask of, expression on and you're competent and you're okay. And what prompted you to kind of rip off that mask? Because you obviously, there must have been a point that you ripped it off. What prompted you? Because asking for help is hard when you are the help.
Sure. I think that I started to sink and started having very suicidal thoughts. I think one of the things about our work, we have this, I feel like, cumulative and collective trauma. I call it secondhand trauma, that has a way of making you feel heavy and you wear it. And so since I didn't know how to metabolize or digest other people's pain, I just piled it up, and I started thinking. And in the midst of all of this transition and trauma and all this insomnia, I stopped understanding where I stopped and where somebody else has started. I started violating my own boundaries, but I didn't know that. And because it was so incremental and it was so insidious that I did not understand that I was started to sink. And my sinking was just not something that started over a year. It was probably a 15-year process, lower and lower and lower. But because when I would sink, it would become my new norm, I didn't think about it. But when it got to the point where I could no longer function, where I was suicidal, when I couldn't take care of my son, when I started really feeling that life was too heavy, I was in trouble. I had enough awareness intellectually to know I needed help. But emotionally, I didn't know how to pull myself through that dark place. I knew I was stuck. I just didn't know how to unstick myself. And I was scared because, again, I'm the person everybody comes to. I'm the minister. I am the life coach. How dare I have emotions? But then also, Tanya, people don't allow us to have emotions. If I would tell someone that I was feeling bad, they will ask me what happened to my faith, as if faith can't coincide. So I started feeling ostracized and stigmatized that I could be in a pulpit and have pain. And so what I had to do is I had to get a therapist. And that was difficult because my therapist could not understand all the different parts of my life. I think sometimes that's why I want to tell people when they reach burnout, you have to find a therapist. You might have to therapist shop for a while to get a person. I had to get a person who understood what it meant for me to be a minister, in corporate America, because I was a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, now a divorced mom. I was a person that had my own depression, my own family issues. Then I had to find someone who could understand what it meant to be a Black woman in America. That's a bunch of challenges all in itself, because America is very racially divided. And I couldn't find someone that I can bring all of who I was to help metabolize it. So I had to, after I got to a point where I realized that I had maxed out a therapist or a counselor's ability to help me, I had to move on. And I want to encourage people to know that's normal, that sometimes people can only help you to a certain level, and maybe you have to go because nobody can understand all the different complexities and all the contradictions that we are. And that was what happened to me.
And I'm really glad that you've actually said that about the shopping around for help. I think you're one of the first speakers to actually say that, because I think when you are a therapist or a counselor or a minister or a social worker or a healthcare professional, because you know it all here, like it's not just going to the first therapist or counselor that you find, because you got to connected here. And you also said that it was a cumulative process, that it was 15 years and then it became the norm. And you don't have to be burnt out to ask for help. You can be struggling. You can be slightly stressed. You can be slightly anxious. You don't need to get to that suicidal, bitter, angry, life is meaningless stage to ask for help. And I wanted to ask you, I'm an experienced social worker, and it was only 2 years ago I came across that concept of vicarious trauma, being traumatized by the work. Yes, you have your own personal traumas and your own family traumas. You and I have both had those, but to actually be traumatized by the work that you do, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. What I realize is that sometimes you hear stories that are so beyond your comprehension that just to hear the story starts to invoke fear in your soul. For example, when I hear stories of people who being gang raped, it is like, oh my God. And it's hard to remain objective in that sense when your sensibilities are assaulted. When you feel that human beings have gone beyond what it means to be human to each other and degrade each other and dehumanize each other in such a way that you cannot get that thought out of your head. You're shocked. You're surprised. And when you feel people who have been brutalized, you can't just intellectualize that away. You can't not act like after you see something, you cannot unsee it. Like you cannot ring the bell. It was a place of cumulative, a collective tragedy, a trauma, because I didn't know how to digest it. Because sometimes people will share with me and I was just in shock. Because remember, we're still human. And again, how did you endure that? How can you be standing here? How can you be able to walk? I am amazed at the human spirit to forgive. I am amazed at the human soul to survive. I am amazed at the human ability to deal with pain. But just think, they're only dealing with their pain. I have 30 people and they're just piled up that I became an emotional dump. Now, they didn't mean to do that. I just didn't know how to digest it. And we have to understand that even though we do this work, there are things that will shock us. I think we have heard stuff that we hear stuff that people don't hear. It's not normal sometimes. Information that we hear is not in the public domain. Now you hear things on news that are devastating. But however, we didn't hear that 10 or 15 years ago. And so now, unfortunately, I have built up a sense of armor, but that's not good because once you have so much armor and you connect to someone's pain, you cannot empathize with them in a way to help them walk through that journey. So it's always about, but I'm very clear now that I can't deal with quantity. And that's why I can never be a social worker. That's why I honor you. I have to select how many people that I can manage because I have to have a boundary because I'm empathic anyway. So I'm going to carry it. And that's what makes me good, but also that makes me vulnerable to depression. And I like both sides of that. But now I have skills. I have tools. I have a coach. I think every coach needs a coach. I think every therapist needs a therapist. I think every minister needs a minister. You can do this work alone.
When I lead my ground workshops, that your relationship with God is just one relationship. You also have a relationship with yourself. That is the actual understanding of the Arabic term deen, deen, which a lot of people translate as religion. And it actually needs your relationship with yourself, your relationship with God, your relationship with other fellow human beings, your relationship with creation, and your relation with other living beings and like animals, and your relationship with the environment. So your relationship with God is just one of those relationships. It's not the only relationship. It's not the most important relationship. If you see you in the center and the others around you as a circle, and balancing those relationships is so important. And the prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, the biblical and the Quranic prophet, they asked for help. Who did they ask for help? They weren't lone islands. They had communities, they had wives, they had partners. And I think sometimes your vulnerability is your strength. And paradoxically, your strength is your ability. What, like you said about this thing about being dumped, most of my life until about a couple of years ago, I felt like I had all of this, because my language, shit dumped on me.
Yeah.
Shit dumped on me. And having sort of stints of therapy unblocked that. Although it was metaphysical and emotional and spiritual, it really literally felt like having a whole load of shit on top of me. And that is heavy.
I think it's really heavy. And I think something that you said that was so profound. I think we need to understand that we have a relationship with God and not a religion. I think religion and its tools and its rules and its rituals and its all these different types of protocols, it disconnects us from God in a way that renders us isolated. So I really feel that my relationship is between me and God, and then me and people. That's the cross, right? But I'm very careful not to abuse all these rules. And the biggest rule to me is love. That's why it was easy for me to extend myself out of my faith, because I understood that the Bible or any book is a guide to God, but it's not God. And so I understand the Bible is a guide to help me be better, but I don't worship it. And so I make sure I always have some type of relationship. But I think people don't understand what that means. I think going to church is fine, but that's not your relationship. Your relationship is that prayer, that talking, that journaling, those other things you do to connect. Because if the closer you are to connecting, you can hear your intuition, which I think is God's voice. And so if I hear my intuition, I never feel alone. If I feel God speaking to me, I'm never alone. And I need that intuition, because without that intuition, I can help other people. Because and do therapy by yourself. You can't be a social worker by yourself. You can't do this work. This work is it's almost like being a surgeon. I think the work that we do, we have to be precise to push people, but not too much to incapacitate them going to the journey. So I tell people I'm a surgeon. My scalpel is my words. My scalpel is my skill. And I try to little by little construct their stories, little by little deconstruct their narratives so that they can see who they are without their stuff, without their labels and their culture and their religion and the stereotypes and the conditioning and all the sticks that we put on ourselves as mother, husband, wife, whatever. Who are you without your stuff? And when you know who you are without your stuff, that's when you can really stand.
Sometimes you have to be completely broken.
Yeah.
You have to let your heart break. And physical pain is hard. It's really hard. And I'm the worst person to be around. But it goes. It usually goes with some painkillers or even some strong painkillers or exercise, whatever. It goes. But emotional pain, it's when you're on your own, is so crippling.
I felt crippled. I have felt caged. I have felt trapped. I have felt as if I was in this bubble. But let me just say this, and Tanya, I know that you probably feel the same way. I think it's important that we realize that everybody, even therapists, don't have language around their emotions. I have found a lot of therapists who could not give language to their emotions. And when you can't describe it or pinpoint it, it's trying to hit a bullseye that you can't see. So I think it's so important to try to put some language around it so somebody can walk you through it. And I think that is key. I think because I was able to put some language, even though I couldn't get the emotions, I could say it feels like I feel suffocated. I feels like I'm drowning. It feels sick in my stomach. Or it feels like a migraine. I was able to help someone else see it so that they could really get me. Because when people don't get you, you don't feel as if you're heard or seen and known. And that's what we really want.
When you were saying that those boundaries went between you and your client, and I thought it was to do with my husband not seeing me, and I gave him hell. I was angry. I was like, I can't stand you. I don't want you in my life. And then when I asked him, you don't see me, he looked at me, really like, what do you mean I don't see you? I've been trying to spot with you, and you're like not wanting to be with me, and I'm still standing by you. And then I realized I had stopped seeing me. I had completely disappeared. I was so busy trying to be a good mom, good social worker, a good daughter, a sister, wife, a good housekeeper, a good cook, trying to do everything to feel good enough. And I had completely lost, what do I want? Where do I want to go? How do I want to be? Who do I want to be? All these questions, sometimes the questions are so important. And I wanted to ask you, was it easy to accept the help after being the help for so long?
To me, it was easy because I was tired. I needed a rescue. I call it emotional rehab. I needed rest. So I wanted someone. I felt like I wanted my mommy. You're like, I want my mommy. That's how I felt. I felt so overwhelmed. I felt that I wanted somebody to take care of me. Not in a way that they took care of my bills, but I needed to rest. And then when I was going through that depression state, I slept a lot. And I thought it was just emotional, but I realized I was tired. I was working a full-time job, building a business, being a single mom. I would travel and nothing. It didn't occur to me, Sharron, you're sleeping off of 4 hours. That's not enough. That's not sustainable. It never occurred to me that what I was doing was not normal because it was my norm. And so I get up in the morning, leave the house at 4:30, go catch a flight at 6 o'clock, go to Florida, work, have a business meeting, come back, pick up my son, go to his basketball camp, come home, go to work next day. And I would do that and do that. And I thought that was normal. And then go to church on Sunday and preach and work out, try to keep myself in shape and work out. And also I have 2 sick parents. And so but remember, it became my norm. And didn't realize that what I was doing was beyond human capacity. You don't know because again, it was slow. And now when I needed help, so not only did I get a therapist, I got a maid, I got an organizer, I got a cook. I brought in all the work because I didn't realize I was doing a lot of jobs and I was doing nothing. The only job I was doing well was my corporate job. And I felt that I had to do that well because I was a single parent. And that well out of fear, not out of creativity. So they did not get the best of me either. So I needed help. I accepted help. And I was very intentional when I realized that the help had exceeded their expectations. Because this is the problem with somebody like me and you, Tanya. We know the school, we know the tools. So I had to get out of, I was analyzing them and judging them at the same time. I didn't know that I was doing it. I'm thinking like, she didn't ask me a follow-up question and he wasn't thorough. So I found myself judging their ability to counsel me. Does that make sense? And so after I got over myself and realized, Sharron, be the patient. Doctors can't heal themselves. And then I was able to let go.
Let go. That's the highlight for me in this interview. Really, the importance of letting go and getting out of your own way. A lot of the time, because we are professionally competent. We're very good. A lot of us are very good at what we do, but we are so bad at looking after ourselves. Some of us are so bad at being kind to ourselves. We'll be kind to the rest of humanity, but to ourselves we say, that was just not good enough. What you just did, you need to work harder. You need to be superhuman. And I wanted to also ask you that that shift. Can you tell us about that shift or that journey a little bit from that deep embarrassment and shame that you felt, but to even seek help, forget about accepting help and getting it to where you are now, where you find it really let go to easy. Can you tell us about that shift?
Sure, that's a great question. I was able to totally disengage what I do and who I am, my being and my doing. And I did not at all feel that my being was what gave me worth. I I was just amazing because I'm here. So that's a song. I'm amazing. So when you get to the point and you know that you're wonderful, you stop hustling for love. You stop hustling for affirmation and approval. You stop hustling trying to keep this facade because you realize, good or bad, you're amazing. Rich or poor, I'm amazing. If I was fatter or skinnier, I'm still amazing. And I hold on to that every day because it's a fragile feeling. If I have a bad day, that feeling it starts to disintegrate, right? But I try to hold on that I'm worthy. And I make sure I make myself a priority. I get up, I feed myself, I work out. I treat myself like I respect my body. I make sure I look good. I make sure I feel good about myself. All of that's self-care. I go to the doctor. I don't let my blood pressure get high. I don't use food to numb me like I used to. I realize, Ron, your body is a tool. How can I keep this tool functioning at the highest level? So I look at myself as something of value. And I'm okay with different boundaries. For example, I don't let people come over my house, no company, because I realize I need to have a safe haven. And my haven is my house. You can see me at church on Sunday. You can see me at the airport. You can see me on the stage. You can see me with my clients. You can see me in Zoom. But I don't have any clients in my house. I don't have people come over my house. I don't like my friends over. I have a non-company zone. And so however I need to be, I never feel this need to dress up for everyone or make sure my house is wonderful. This is nobody comes over because I need to have one place, and this is my sanctuary. And that was healing. That was healing. Now, let me tell you, I lost some friends, and people will say that, Sharron, you're narcissistic, you're an egomaniac, and a whole bunch of other things because I play by my own rules, but I'm okay with that. I'd rather be hated for who I am than to be loved for who I am not. And I really get to that space. And I refuse to be a public success and a private failure. I refuse to be that. And so now I make sure if everything else is going to hell around me, I am in a good space. And because I'm not attached. Even if I make $1 million, I'm still a millionaire. If I have 2 cents, I'm still a millionaire spiritually and emotionally. And because I have my health. And you have your health, you have everything.
And money is just energy anyway. Some people, they attract money and then it's gone very quickly because they don't feel worthy of it. And this kind of thing that you were actually saying about being a human being okay and with who you are rather than a human doing. We are soul sisters because this is something that I've written about in my blogs about stop being a human doing and become a human being. The ways of our being are so instrumental to how we are to ourselves, to each other. And I wanted to ask you, what would you say are the top 3 signs or symptoms that somebody's on their way to burnout? Because
That's a good question. I think one to two, if there's a change in your patterns, for example, if you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough, are you eating too much or you're not eating enough? Any type when you start seeing a significant change of how you function, I think that's one sign. The second sign, if you realize you're starting to numb, if you're using food, sex, if you're shopping, if you're talking, if you're gossiping, if you're working out, if you're using religion, it could be a drug too. If you're overdoing something, trying to shut down your emotions, or quiet what I call the demons in your head, I think that's a sign that you're using some type of external experience or external thing to make you feel good inside. That numbing is key. And I think the third thing is when you start to sense a change in how you interact with people, meaning you're highly irritable, impatient, bitterness? Are you You're very cynical? Are you, in the South, we have this term called nice nasty. And that means that I'm smiling on the outside, but I'm cussing you out in the inside. It's called nice nasty. It's something that we say in America. And so I think that any type you have a behavioral change, you're numbing, or if you're doing some change in your pattern, I think that should give you a sign. My sign was I started seeing big shifts in my weight because I started using food. I'm a number. And I would eat, and one day I'm like, oh my God, 20 pounds heavier. I didn't realize it. Or I stopped sleeping, right? Or sleeping too much. Another sign for me is when I started getting snappy. Many times I'm very patient. I'm hyper, but I'm patient. And when I start getting judgy, I was off. Because when I get judgy when I'm tired. And so there are ways for us to look at our behavior. And then I think that's why you have to give people permission in your life. I call them loving internal stakeholders. We have to have people in our life who calls us on our stuff, and it cannot be your spouse. Because when your spouse calls you on your stuff, it hurts deeper and not objective. Because sometimes we're mad because they deserve everything we give them. But I think when you have people in your life who are close to you, they'll be able to identify changes. I have friends who tell me, Sharron, you're not sleeping. Sharron, you're gaining weight. Sharron, your hair is coming out. Sharron, you get snappy. Sharron, your writing, I have a blog, your writing is getting very dark. They are internal loving stakeholders. They can see patterns, and I give them permission to help me understand how they are experiencing me. And I don't know how people experience me. I think I'm wonderful. I don't know I'm chopping everybody's head off. So you have to have people in your life to give you some feedback because we all have blind spots. And you can only have illumination of your blind spots if you have people who you trust, who love you, who are not threatened by you, are jealous of you, can tell you when you are misbehaving.
Yeah. I think that just what Sharron has given you is so precious. That's like a jewel. You've been given a jewel there because there is a saying of the Prophet Muhammad that's coming to my mind that a believer is a mirror to another believer.
Yes.
And sometimes a believer actually comes from the Arabic amuna, the root verb amuna, which means it's got so many different layers, but it means to trust, reliable, not just to believe in God, to trust, to be reliable, to know. So, when you have somebody in your life that you trust, you rely on, they rely on you, they are going to tell you, they are actually going to tell you the bits of you that you don't like. Like, I know when I started embracing my dark side, it was not a comfortable journey. The fact that I can be really impatient, very judgmental, very cynical, very selfish person at times. Because being a human being, we have those capacities, but it's about owning those capacities,
Yes.
owning those parts of ourselves, because we're complex. We are not all we're angels and devils at the same time.
Absolutely.
And that's why that saying of Prophet Muhammad, I think, is so profound, because every single time you meet somebody that you trust, somebody that you rely on, they will tell you things. And then usually if you are also at a place where you can actually accept that, then that kind of makes you more aware of it. And sometimes that cynicism doesn't go. Sometimes, but to be aware of it, then you know what to do with it. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. We have to be accountable to someone. If you think about people who make the biggest strides in Alcoholics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous, there's some accountability. Somebody has to be given permission to speak into your life. And like you said, there are a mirror, but they have to be a mirror that's not cracked.
Mm.
And it means that I know that a mirror is cracked if they have not done their own work. I don't allow people to speak into my life if they have never been in therapy. I don't let people speak in my life if they have never had big failure or big tragedy. You cannot speak in my life if you have not been through divorce or death or devastation. Why? You don't have the expertise and experience to tell me something that's going to really help me. Wisdom comes from experience, even though we can pray and ask God for wisdom and get wisdom. But it's something about lived experience that gives you credibility. And what I don't want to happen, I don't want people who've been on the sidelines all their life giving me feedback because it doesn't seem real. I want someone who has been in tight spaces, who have been through some tragedy and some trouble, some tribulation, and give me some feedback based on their experience. I can read anything in a book. And that's why I tell my clients, they think, oh, I don't need a therapist. I read a book. You can read a book about swimming too, but you don't know if you can swim until you jump in the water. And I think that's the thing. I need people. We can never become our best selves by ourselves. We always need another person to journey with us. And that person has to be a confident person, which is hard for people like you and I. I'm a very confident woman. So a person who can be that person for me has to come and be equipped. It has to be evenly yoked. So if not, I won't listen. Let's be honest, I won't listen. If you have not been able to be as successful and juggle all the complexities and contradictions that I have to juggle, honestly, I'm a listen, but you will have the same credibility versus a person who's been where I've been. I think that's important. I tell people I don't want company or companion. I want competence. And I don't want you to be my pal. I want you to be my partner. And look for people just to be in my life in very shallow places. I don't like superficiality. I like people who have an ability that they have substantive, spiritual, life-altering conversations. If not, I will not waste my time.
And that you really captured so much there, because this is something I say, you've got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Prophet Muhammad was called the walking Quran. He didn't talk about the Quran. He was the walking Quran.
Yes.
And to be a person of integrity is not just about how many promises you keep to others. It's about how many promises to yourself are an inspiration from me. And in the last year, I have become much more disciplined with my writing because it's something that I get for myself. And I know there are lots of social workers and healthcare professionals out there, but by creating something, whatever that is, whether that's a piece of music or writing or even a dish that they cook, it's something beautiful. It's something not just healing, it's beyond healing.
Sometimes in our lives, we have to walk away from some things based on what else is going on in our life, or the season is in our life, or the person, so we can walk towards some other things. Walk away from something that no longer serves you, and when to walk towards something that satisfies you and provides the foundation that you need to be your best self. Because sometimes we miss those moments, and it's nothing worse than a person who misses their opportunity, because then you become really jealous and you become a hater of others. We all have those windows of opportunities that if we don't walk through the window, the door closes, and so we have to wait. So I want to make sure we don't miss opportunities. I have missed tons of opportunities in my life, tons, because I was not well enough to walk emotionally, or I was not aware enough to realize it was an opportunity, or I was too angry that I felt like the world owed me something and I felt entitled. And so I missed a lot of opportunities in my life. That's why I'm 50-something years old now, and I'm committed to do all of what I want to do. People ask me, how can you work and be a minister and travel and speak and coach and have a full-time job and help your two parents? Because I'm committed to explore every part of me, because I didn't do it for 30 years. I want to know what's in me. I believe we come to the world fully loaded with treasure. I want to know what's in me. And if I have to walk away from this to walk toward that, I am going to experience every facet of my personality. So I will die empty.
Oh, Sharron, I could talk to you all day. I'm gonna have to say thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the time. All right. Thank you.